G'day YouTube, Max right here, and something just really fascinating has happened here with Trump's 4 executive orders where he bypasses Congress to offer some kind of, let's call it a corona relief package by executive order. Rarely does one single instance come up where there's so many different ways to analyze this and think about it, the pros and the cons. And I've just had some fascinating conversations over the last couple of days. I'm going to try and play devil's advocates for both sides of this. And let's get into it because I think it's really, really interesting. So let's start with the facts, what was going on, what's happening. So earlier in the year, after the coronavirus hit, Congress did get together. They agreed and provided some kind of stimulus package, but there was an expiry date on it. That has expired. And now they're talking about, well, corona hasn't gone, we're still on lockdown. They're trying to put a new package deal together. And what's happening is basically Congress, or the Republicans and Democrats cannot agree. So it appears this is what it appears like to me, is that they both agree that there should be some kind of stimulus offered. They both pretty much agree on what the stimulus should be, maybe in varying different degrees or whatever, but they agree with it. They agree with the urgency of it, and yet they can't come to an agreement. What's happening is the Republicans are saying, look, we agree on this stuff. Let's just sign it and get it done and give the people the money that we both want to give them. And the the Democrats are saying no. Basically, they feel like they've got Trump over a barrel. It's an election year. If the economy tanks, that's going to hurt your chances of getting elected. That means we've got you over a barrel. So in addition to all the stimulus and the stuff that we agree should go out, we want to put in a whole bunch of extra crap, which we would never get past otherwise, which we know you hate, which we love. And if we get it all in, great, this is going to be a win for us. If we don't get it in, there's no stimulus goes out, the economy tanks, that your chance of getting elected suffer, we get elected. It's a win-win for us. Democrats feel like they've got Trump over a barrel and are leveraging and making the American people suffer as a result. Now, that's from their perspective and the Republican perspective. I think that's pretty fair analysis. I think that if you're looking at that objectively, I think that is what you come up with. So I said I'm going to try to be devil's advocate. There'll be some parts of this where I definitely argue in favor of Democrats. That's not one. I just think that's fantasy. I'm sure we could find a Democrat who could make the argument that Republicans are being evil and are the blockage, but I have no patience for that argument. That is what is happening. The Democrats are empowered. They feel like they got Trump over a barrel, and they're just not going to hold back the thing that they think is best for the country as a political tool to get some advantage for the election and in other ways. Okay, so now let's talk about let's just do more. What are the executive orders that he has proposed? And let's talk about the issues of that, specifically bypassing Congress. For those of you who don't know, by the Constitution, the power of the purse is in Congress. It is supposed to be the House and the Senate who agree on how to appropriate funds and where funds come from. It is not supposed to be by executive order from Trump. We'll analyze that deeper in just a moment, but let's just look at what the 4 executive orders are. Because the Democrats think that they've got Trump over a barrel, say we're not playing unless you give us all this stuff, Trump has said, screw it, I'm going to do something which I know full well is not by the Constitution, i.e. illegal. I'm going to do it. Let's see what he's going to do, and then let's see what his strategy is. Let's talk about his strategy first. What he's banking on is he's banking on it being so... He's really using it to say, okay, I'm going to give all the things that we agree on that we want to give the people. I'm going to go ahead and give it to them by executive order. Now, Democrats, the ball is in your court. You've got 2 options. You can either challenge me in the Supreme Court and you'll win, and I know that, and you know that, right? But what you'll do in the process is you'll out yourself to the whole of America of denying them the aid that every single person here agrees on that they should get. Or you can sit back and do nothing. You had your opportunity to make this a bipartisan, relief package, but you screwed up, you overplayed your hand, and now I'm going to get all the credit for offering this stimulus package, and people are going to like me, it's going to help my election chances, and so now I've got you over a barrel, go screw yourself. Very, very savvy political move. Let's talk about a little bit more what the executive orders are, just so we'll talk about them, although that's not the really interesting part. And then we'll go and talk about the libertarian perspective. You know how I love that, because this is a double punch in the guts for libertarians in some way. I'm going to explain that. But then there's this other aspect which is just really challenging and somewhat hypocritical, and yet I'm going to make that argument in just a minute, so stay tuned. Okay, what are the things? Forgive me if I look down while I read here. So Executive Order number 1, he's going to delay the payroll tax collection for those making under $104,000. So for those of you who don't know, every time you receive a paycheck, if you're a W-2 employee in America, there is a tax. It's the same tax. It's through absolute stupidity. It's half taken from the employer and half taken from the employee, which is just moot and ridiculous, but whatever. Let's add bureaucracy where it doesn't belong. And the half that is taken out of the employee's paycheck, Trump's going to say until Christmas, to December 31st, we are no longer going to take that. So it's going to give the appearance that everybody's paycheck is bigger. Now, it's just delayed. And in fact, I think they're still technically going to owe it back in December 31st, but almost certainly that will just be we're going to forget about it and we'll just start charging it again, or maybe eliminate it completely is what Trump's hinted at. But anyway, that's Executive Order number 1. We'll just breeze through because they're not that important. Unemployment aid is extended to $400 per week. So in the original stimulus package, the unemployment aid, if you're unemployed, you get a check for $600 per week, in addition to all the normal unemployment benefits, which is around about $300 a week. So I think the Democrats did want that to stay at $600. Republicans wanted to pull that down to $200. I think Trump said, look, I'm doing this by executive order, but I'll try and meet in the middle. We're going to do $400 a week extra because we just need to get this stuff done and getting it in people's hands. And so there's that. Executive Order number 3. He's asked officials to consider and find ways to enact a law where people can't be evicted for not paying their rent. This obviously is the argument is huge shock to the system. Lots and lots of people lost their jobs. I think 40, 50 million and counting so far. All of these people out of the blue lost their jobs. Let's make it impossible for them to be evicted during this time. And let's wait for the coronavirus to pass. Then you can evict people if they don't have their jobs back. But it's a little bit wishy-washy worded, and he's asking certain three-letter agencies and Trump's executives, i.e. cabinet, etc., to find ways of doing this, but it's not actually doing it. That's Executive Order number 3. Executive Order number 4, student loan payments are deferred until the end of the year, December 31st. Again, just trying to keep more money in people's pockets so as to not go through the massive deflationary event, which the economy is so desperately trying to do. So they're the 4 executive orders. Let's see. Let's talk about now, talk about the effectiveness and use of these executive orders. As I said earlier, this is a double punch in the guts for conservatives and libertarians. Financially, so fiscally conservative people and libertarians who are fiscally conservative, socially liberal, we're seeing this as just a huge spending spree. Again, just billions and billions of dollars racked up in debt, all to give to people to be not productive. It spits in the face of the free market system. For those of you who don't understand Austrian economics and how this might work, Austrian economists, which is what I am, what I believe in, they argue that the excesses that build up during the boom is the disease, and the crash is actually the patient healing. It's going through so another way to say this is that the money printing is the heroin that the economy is given by all the Keynesian economists. When it's taken away, when something goes bad, this is actually the withdrawals. They're actually, the economy is becoming healthy during the pullback. The excesses, the over-leveraged debt, all of that stuff gets unwound. It's a very tough time, but all the dead tissue is brushed away, and now a healthy economy can restart and reboom. When you come in with more heroin, you are prohibiting the health of the economy. You are prohibiting the necessary withdrawal symptoms that happens when you detox from a toxic drug happening. And what you get is just you eventually kill the patient and you overdose them with financial stimulus injection. Eventually the currency becomes toilet paper and you have a much worse situation than a mere recession that lasts for a couple of years and all the pain that goes along with that. For people who understand that, i.e. fiscally conservative people and libertarians, the whole argument is a serious punch to the guts. However, in this particular situation, both Democrats and Republicans agree that this should happen. Like, as in, typically in liberal ideology, they would be arguing for this no matter what. There's an argument that said Trump's only making this case because it's an election year, and the facts are the economy will crumble big time. It's also an extremely so there's an argument that Trump is just doing this just before the election, and he will become a lot more fiscally conservative after the election. Maybe that holds water, maybe it doesn't, not so sure. And then the other argument is this coronavirus and the whole economy lockdown worldwide, it's unprecedented and complete insanity. And so, this is the kind of relief package that exactly government should do, these one-time things that are once in 100-year pandemics and things like that. If ever there's an argument for it, this is the argument for it. So there's that is punch in the guts number one for fiscally conservative libertarian people. Punch in the guts number two is bypassing Congress. The Constitution is very clear. The power of the purse is held by Congress. The executive, i.e. the president, is not supposed to be appropriating funds and doing things. He did this again with the wall. He kind of found, again, Congress would not give him money for the wall. He found money in the national defense budget, and he found money in, I think he declared an emergency, he found some money in an emergency fund, and is getting the wall built. He is not the first person to do this. Obama has a very famous speech on YouTube, if you care to find it. Obama came out when the Congress was locked and he wanted to do something. He made the exact same speech that we can't just sit around while Congress is in a deadlock. And so via executive order, he did the same thing. Again, from a political purpose, from an election purpose, which is coming up in just a few months, there is very, very little difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. It's not pleasing for Republicans, not pleasing for libertarians, not pleasing for fiscally conservative people. And let's go to the topic now. The argument is that it sets a dangerous precedent. And there's something interesting here. A precedent, yeah, there's what would be the word? Almost like a social precedent, like an anecdotal precedent that he appropriated the funds and it's happened. Like I said, it's happened before with the wall. It happened before with Obama. None of these things were ever challenged in the Supreme Court. And I don't think this one will be challenged in the Supreme Court too. It's too politically unacceptable in an election year for the Democrats to come up and say, no, don't let the money go out to the people who desperately need it. Then when the economy, see, they both know that the economy is going to crash, by the way. They're positioning to create credible arguments for why they can point it at the other person, right? So the Democrats thought they were going to, they have control of the media, they have control of Silicon Valley. They can use those tools to make the argument that the Republicans and Democrats didn't come to an agreement because Trump was just stuck his heels in and the American people lost. They had that argument. Trump has outmaneuvered them. He's come along and said, well, I'm just going to go and give it them. Now the ball's in your court. You go to the Supreme Court and you make it obvious to everyone that you're not letting them get the money that I'm proposing. And then if the economy crashes and you do that, now you are 100% responsible. So a lot of political positioning going on here. As a result, I don't think it's going to be challenged in the Supreme Court. It would be extremely bad maneuver for the Democrats in an election year. And more likely what they will do is the Democrats will come back and say, oh, screw it, let's just do exactly what you said, but we'll do it with through Congress, and then we get 50% of the credit for giving people all this money. So they're vying over who gets the credit for giving the electorate and voters free money, and so they're all want credit for that. That sits how that sits. Let's now talk about a couple other concepts here. If I could sum up what is wrong with the country, is that there has been a severing of cause and effect. And it's been going on for decades, way before Trump, way before Obama. It's been going on forever. It's this slow acceleration towards this principle where if I drink all night, it's okay if you get the hangover. The problem with that, of course, is there is no incentive for me to not drink the next day. So the next day, I'm going to keep drinking again if you get the hangover. And we do this at every level in the economy, the severing of cause and effect. If you make bad decisions, you should get bad results. Your life should suffer. It should get worse. But everyone's trying to make legislation to bail out people who make bad decisions, to rescue them from their bad decisions. Examples of this area, if you get pregnant out of wedlock and you can't afford children, don't worry, the government will come in and give you free schooling, free healthcare for those children, free meals at school for those children. There is no punishment. If you did not save for a rainy day and you get fired and it rains, don't worry, the government will give you unemployment checks as if you're employed for up to a year. No, it's your responsibility to save for a rainy day. That is the prudent thing to do. If you voted for Democrats and they ran your state or city into the ground, no, there should not be bailouts for that city. You voted for people who defunded the police and you didn't stand up and protest, and the police got defunded and those cities went to shit. No, your city does not get bailed out. You made those decisions. You allowed it to happen on your watch. You should suffer the consequences. The good citizens of states who did not let that happen should not send money over to you to bail you out, because what will be your incentive to not allow that next time? So, and the 4 executive orders, that's the tragedy of it. It's an election year. We have an extremely uneducated electorate. And so they're trying to buy votes. They're fighting over who gets the credit for severing cause and effect. People did not save for a rainy day. People did not increase their skills and have greater mobility. People did not have the skills to start new businesses. People haven't been working on that for the last 20 years. They've been having fun doing other things, so be it. But all of these things, that you're bailing them out and they're vying over control of it. And that is very, very sad. The country can never, ever heal until someone stands up and has the balls to say, we have to connect cause and effect. Bad stuff happens. It is not the government's job to try and save you from the bad stuff that happens. It's your job to anticipate it and allow for it and mitigate that risk. That is when everybody in the country is doing that. And when people who don't do that get punished, a lot more people do it. The country is more resilient because the citizens are more resilient. And we don't get as beat as we have by the coronavirus because so many more people are more resilient. Therefore, the country is healthier. Next point I want to talk about. Let's talk about the greater good. Is it okay to do immoral, illegal things for the greater good? So first of all, what's the problem with that argument? It's a very big, obvious problem. The biggest evils the world has ever created were all done under the guise of the greater good for the greater people. Hitler didn't view himself as an evil person. He thought, look, if we just sacrifice these nasty, gross Jews, then billions of people over here can live a free and wonderful life. They'll be richer, they'll be more prosperous. It's worth slaughtering 12, he didn't finish his job, 30 million people in order for a billion people to be happy. The greater good of the greater number will be served if I do. I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it. This obviously, I mean, you name the evil in society, it's always justified by the greater good for the greater people. When the communists slaughtered 100 million of their own citizens, any intellectual, anyone who disagreed with them, if we just slaughter these horrible capitalist and free-thinking people, then everyone will be on board with this communism idea and we can all live peacefully and equally and everyone will have enough to eat. And so my slaughter is justified. Every single thing across history is justified by this. Okay. What do we do? What's happening now? See, Trump is doing something which he knows is illegal. He knows it's against the Constitution. He's not allowed to appropriate funds, but he's doing it for a greater good in his mind. It's to help him get elected, and he sees that it's worth it. He thinks he probably doesn't have to go through with it. I mean, he's gone through with it. He's written an executive order, but he's hoping that's a tool that he never even has to use because the Dems will come in and say, okay, let's make this bipartisan so that we get some credit for it. But still, nonetheless, the act is taken, and that is very, very hard for people to swallow. But here is where I battle with this, because believe me, I understand the hypocrisy of it. There are some instances, and there are plenty of arguments to suggest that it's to where it's turned out really, really good that some really horrible things were done in the name of the greater good for the greater people. Let me share this. This is the difference. This is where you get the divide between idealists, and that's maybe a negative term. Let's give it a positive term. people with integrity. How about that? They have views and they only act within those views. They argue that if you want to make the world a better place, you can't do it no matter how evil the opposition is, no matter how undermined, no matter how immoral, no matter how illegal acts, no matter how many illegal acts they make. You can't make the world a better place by becoming like them, but with a better ideology, using your power and overpowering people. You have to just be better and do it within the confines of morality. Okay, that's an argument. But then you have the utilitarians, which are saying that sounds brilliant. Problem is, it just doesn't work, especially when you get past a certain point. When America, listen, you guys have heard this before, but after the Cold War, America went asleep, and it was a strategic decision to let Russia collapse, the Soviet Union collapse, make it the appearance that the Cold War had ended and communism was defeated, and we didn't need to concentrate anymore. Well, America didn't concentrate on it anymore, and over the next 30, 40 years, what happened was communists have been infiltrating. They've taken over Silicon Valley, the mainstream media, the Democrat Party, half of the Republican Party, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, BLM movements, Antifa movements, you name it. They've been working relentlessly for 30 years. And we are now at such a point that there is just too many of them and they will overwhelm us. Now, this is not theory and it's not been untested before. Pinochet in Chile is a very, very important lesson in history. I'm now playing devil's advocate, arguing for the case of, for the greater good, for the greater number, by the way. Chile was being overrun by communists, and by a hair's breadth, Pinochet seized control and slaughtered a whole bunch of communists. No due process, no niceties, slaughtered them. The ones he didn't slaughter, they got exiled. Many of them sent to Sweden, by the way. It went from being a wonderful capitalist country, the envy of Europe, and it shit the bed and has gone through a self-destruction process. But Chile is now the jewel of Latin America. And make no mistake, in no uncertain terms, it was because the communists were slaughtered by Pinochet in one of as evil an act as you can imagine, just wholesale slaughter of people. But make no mistake, Chile, it has the highest income per capita in the entire Latin America, I believe. I think that's true. If it's not, it's definitely one of the top. It has the highest education standard. It has a roaring economy, and it is one of the most capitalist countries there. It has the lowest poverty rates. It is the jewel of Latin America. And it happened because Pinochet went and slaughtered the communists. So, really, really evil, dastardly act. Country on the brink of becoming Venezuela, falling into a communist nightmare. Pinochet, history judges him poorly, comes in, slaughters the communists, rescues the country, capitalist utopia, jewel of Latin America. The utilitarian argument says that America is on the doorstep of a communist takeover. Look at the news, look at the streets, look at the riots, look at the children being pumped out of colleges, being indoctrinated into communism. It is happening, and we might need to break a few eggs to make this omelet. We might need to violate a few rules. We might need to do something. And I'll tell you this, says these people. If you don't do just a little bit of things like, appropriate money here, Lord knows that the left are appropriating money left and right. Every single leftist course, it's all the leftists in bureaucracies, in the teachers' unions, in all of these things, that all these government employees, all of these bureaucracies. Washington D.C. is just completely overrun by leftists, and so all this money is being funneled to there. If we can't funnel some money to the people via these executive orders, if we can't help out, forget about it. The country is lost. I find this just so interesting. Definitely as I age, I'm moving away from the idealist perspective and moving towards the utilitarian aspect. I'm not advocating the wholesale slaughter of the commies just yet. Not even near it, but I say that jokingly. But I do notice myself on this trend going that way. And I think this is just the most fascinating argument going on right now. It's something that I'm going through personally as a journey. And I'm fascinated to hear what you guys think about those two arguments. Which one are you? Are you noticing a shift? Are you noticing yourself being pulled in one direction? What do you think's going on, and where are you? It's like I said, if you're a Trump fan, as I am, and a libertarian, these executive orders are a double punch to the gut. I don't think they help the economy. I think it's buying votes, although I'm not sure if he thinks that. I'm not sure if he thinks it helps the economy or it's buying votes. I think it's buying votes. And the second punch is it's a violation of the Constitution, which I love and cherish. But the utilitarian argument says that we have allowed things to go so far that if we do not take some liberties and push back strongly in some way, we will have a civil war. And if we have a civil war, the amount of death and destruction that will happen as a result, because we played by the rules, I mean, is that on us? I don't know. I'm baffled by this. It's really shaking me. Really shaking my mindset and everything I think of. And I would love to start a discussion. I would love to talk to you guys about it. So let me know what you think is going on let me know what you think in the description. I love to hear it. I hope I've given you food for thought. I hope I presented both arguments reasonably well. And yeah, please give me that like button, do the subscribe, do all the wonderful things, and let me hear what you think. Take care. Bye.